and welcome back to Around Town with Lily. Today, I'm speaking with Joe Conway and Claire Moss from Wakefield DPW. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having us.
So I thought today we could talk about recycling. So what are the benefits of recycling?
Lead it off?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say they're numerous, right? So recycling from the get-go is great because it helps our planet. The more recycling we have, the less plastics end up in the ocean. I think that that's a great thing to keep in mind. Also, recycling allows us to keep additional items outside of our waste stream, which is historically has been cheaper for municipalities to deal with. As of now, that's not quite the situation, but no, recycling is great for the planet.
Yeah, so one of our goals every day in Public Works is to leave things better than when we receive them or find them. And by being able to recycle effectively, it's making sure that that happens out in the environment. You know, it's keeping trash out of the parks and out of the water and different things like that, and making sure that if anything can be reused, it's reused so that, like paper, for example, if we can recycle paper, it means we don't have to take a tree down to make more of it. So,
what happens to recycled items after they're picked up off the curb?
So after recycled items get picked up off the curb, they're taken to a sorting facility. So in Wakefield, all of your recycling is commingled. So paper, plastic, glass is all mixed together. So the vendor that we have in town will pick it up at the curb and bring it to a facility to sort that. And then from there, and it's sorted, they'll bale the paper and combine the glass and the plastics, and then actually bring that to market and sell it to people who are looking to use the material to reuse it.
How long has Wakefield been recycling?
That's an excellent question. So recycling started in the early 80s on a volunteer level. So it was citizens that were getting out there and recycling. I think it started with paper. And after some success and things started growing, in 1990, the town added that as a biweekly collection. So we've been doing it for quite a long time.
We're pros now.
What are recycling centers and how do they work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have, recycling centers are essentially places where you can drop off recycling items, or they're places that sort and process recycling. So here in town, we work with JRM. They're our contractor for recycling purposes. So as Joe had explained earlier, they take all of our recycling and then they process it there. So that's one example of a recycling center.
What items cannot be recycled?
Another great question.
Excellent question.
Yeah, there's more than you think.
So what are some of the most frequently asked about items? Pizza boxes.
Contaminated, dirty ones.
Correct. So the grease from the pizza cheese and things like that affects the ability to make new paper out of that. So that's considered waste. Some other things are what they consider tanglers. So extension cords and cables and things like that.
Coat hangers.
Coat hangers.
Plastic bags.
When they're processing the recycling at the facility, it actually jams up the machines right now. So those are some things, unfortunately, that can't be recycled.
What are examples of household hazardous items and how do you recycle them?
Another really good question. So household hazardous items are things like oil-based paints or spray paint cans, different solvents, cleaners, things like that might serve a purpose at home for cleanliness or something like that, but it's not something that we want to have out in the environment. And the town of Wakefield and the town of Reading host household hazardous waste collection days. In the spring, Wakefield residents can go to Reading, and in the fall, both Reading residents and Wakefield residents can come to Wakefield, and we'll actually collect all that from everybody.
What's the most important step in recycling?
I'm sure we both have different opinions about this, but for me, I think it's at the residential level, right? I think it's that people are engaged with it. I think it's important that people are cleaning out their recycling goods. So if you have like an empty peanut butter jar, you just want to make sure it's rinsed out, cleaned up before you put it in the recycling. And I think that's most important.
I would say along with that, the other thing is recycling. It's not very hard to do. And the most important thing from my perspective is that everybody participates.
Are there any new ideas or technologies coming into recycling?
Sure. So recycling is something that's always changing. So technology is always making breakthroughs in different ways we can reuse things or we can reduce. As far as something brand new coming right out, a huge thing that we're using is education and social media. Claire's been doing a lot of work on outreach to kind of get the word out to people. So that's a new tool that we can use as far as that's concerned. Textiles are another thing that people are starting to see being recycled or donated, you know, whichever method you choose. So that's something, but it's always evolving.
Yeah, and textiles I think are really cool because I think that's something that's been around for a long time. I mean, people will deliver old clothing, but now you're seeing it being reused a little bit differently. So I have a pair of flip-flops at home that are made from recycled goods. Like, that's pretty cool, right? Or maybe people are using it for construction materials now. So you're seeing things like backyard porches that are made entirely based off of recycled items. So I think that the relationship around textiles and reusing goods is changing a lot. So it's not so much about recycling, period. It's also how can we reuse materials that typically don't get a lot of reuse. So glass, for example, is something that we're seeing being reused in different ways. Or, you know, the different, like, I think a really cool one is the pavers, right? It's made out of like old tires. Like, that's something that's kind of neat too.
Yep, so there are companies out there too that are taking, a technology advancement is taking plastic, and actually they came up with some sort of mechanical process to spin that into fiber and make fleece.
Yeah.
So that's just a couple examples of it.
So you can wear it, you can walk on it. Recycling's pretty cool.
How can you measure if Wakefield's doing good in recycling?
So one way you could definitely measure is just by walking around and taking a look around, right? So finding that litter and different things like that aren't scattered around or, you know, in the places that we like to enjoy for recreation and whatnot. Another way that we can, as far as, you know, the business side of things, every week the vendors that we use to pick up residential trash and residential recycling send us tonnage reports. So one of the ways we measure it is if the recycling tonnage for the week of what we've collected is increasing and the trash is going down, we're seeing that people are recycling more and actually throwing away less.
Right. I would also add to that, I think it's based off of recycling options. So Joe mentioned earlier about people walking around whether or not you see recycling, but I think another big part of that is whether or not the community is offering public space recycling. And that's something we're actually working on right now. So I have a site visit next week about a couple different locations in town where we can add additional recycling receptacles, which is a really cool opportunity for, you know, residents to engage more with recycling, but also from our perspective, it's one more, you know, layer of a service that we can provide to residents who want to see more recycling in town. And we have people who are asking for it, which I think is really cool too.
So I have brought in some items, and I was hoping you could tell me if they're recyclable or not.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Absolutely.
So I have this plastic jar. Is it recyclable?
So
Yes.
Wakefield currently takes plastics numbers 1 through 7. So if you look on the bottom of the jar, you should see a little triangle
6.
recycling symbol. The number 6, we would take that.
Okay, thank you. Is this tin foil recyclable?
No. So remember we talked earlier about the pizza boxes and the contamination? Unfortunately, you find that a lot with the tin foil, which would make it not able to be recycled.
Is this amazing newspaper recyclable?
Only after you're done reading it from front to back.
Yeah.
Is this coat hanger recyclable?
So as we mentioned earlier, that would be deemed a tangler, so that is not recyclable.
And finally, is this shoebox recyclable?
Yes.
It sure is.
Thank you. So I have a few more questions. What is the main question you get about recycling?
There's probably a few. So one of them, a lot of people ask, how can I do more? And we certainly love to help people be able to participate and make participation as easy as it can be. Another question you'll get, similar to what you just asked us, you know, can this be recycled? Can this not be recycled? We answer things like that, you know, quite frequently. Trying to think, you got any more of those?
I find that when we do all of our public engagement and outreach, we also get a lot of questions about what cannot be recycled. we also get questions about where they can be recycled. So if we don't accept something in town, are there other options? Most frequently, we'll point them in the right direction. So if there's anything that people have questions about because we don't take them in town, then we typically will either provide you with an example or tell you where you can find more information on that.
And finally, how can people reach you?
That's it. Great question. So we can be reached in the office by telephone. We can certainly be reached via the website. Citizens can fill out a service request. Public Works is always at things like the Festival by the Lake, Wakefield 101, Festival Italia. We're always there. We always have a booth set up. So I'd encourage people to come out and meet us, talk to us, ask us questions. We're always looking for questions because it helps us be creative and find solutions to things that people are looking forward to. That's basically the most frequent. You can write us a letter if you want to. We'll
drop by
reply to
town
that,
hall.
Thank you both for coming today.
Thank you for
Thanks for having
us.
Thank you for watching today, and I hope to see you next time.